Well, with no further ado, I'm going to dive in. Welcome, everybody. I'm Jocelyn Getson, Chief Growth Officer at Bindable. And this is actually our first episode of our new series that we are calling Unbind with Bindable. And during the series, we're going to be sitting down with our partners, industry leaders, and really tackling some of the topics facing digital insurance today and trying to provide tangible examples of what's working and where companies are seeing success. I think there's some great conversations being had in LinkedIn and individually. And so this is an opportunity to bring that together and pull a great audience together to hear firsthand some of the stories from the field. I really can't think of two better guests to have with me. And we do have a fantastic topic. Topic today is strategic partnerships, the key to digital insurance ecosystems. Has a lot of buzzwords packed in there. I do love a buzzword, but I also like, uncoupling those and looking at what is the breakdown of each of those words and how are strategic partnerships really impacting and driving some of the opportunities that we're seeing in this space today. And I do want to point out as well, just a little bit of housekeeping. There is at the bottom of the Zoom a Q&A button. So you can submit questions as they come in, as you think of them, and really good questions, not only, but feel free to post any questions that you have and we will get to those either through the podcast or at the end. So let's go ahead and I'm going to kick off by introducing our hosts, our panelists, and first being Phil Walker. Phil is the CEO of iptiQ Americas by SwissRe. iptiQ provides a cutting-edge digital platform, data-driven products, and end-to-end omni-channel solutions. Phil is at the helm of the ship over there and is the former founder of two companies, has more than 25 years of experience transforming financial services businesses, including running the online marketing and operations for Capital One. So thank you so much, Bill, for joining us.
Thanks, Joss.
And we have Bill Suneson. Bill is our fearless leader over here at Bindable. He is the CEO and co-founder. Bindable is enabling digital distribution of insurance products. Bill also happens to be the co-founder of GradGuard. They're the leading insurance platform for colleges and universities. And actually, Bill in general is one of the nation's foremost affinity marketing leaders and former president of PIMA, which is Professional Insurance Marketing Association. So definitely some great insights I know that he'll be sharing. Thanks, Bill, for joining.
Thanks, Jocelyn.
I know I had to twist your arm on this one, but I'm glad you're able to make it. And the reason I wanted both of you together is I think if this past year has taught us anything, it's that there's a greater need than ever to really start thinking more progressively about digital insurance delivery, about the products themselves, and really with the ultimate goal of providing relevant and timely offers to potential insureds. So to actually create convenient and seamless customer experiences, there's a lot that needs to happen behind the scenes. And I'm talking to two fantastic tech companies, but you really, sometimes it takes bringing together the best in class partnerships to get projects across the finish line and make it feel seamless. So obviously this is a topic that's top of mind for both of your organizations. And Bill, it'd be great to hear from you. And Phil, please weigh in. How'd the partnership come about?
Well, thanks, Jocelyn, and thanks for putting this together for everyone. And the name Unbind, I really like it. But if any of our policyholders are on the line, it doesn't mean they can unbind their policyholders. Yeah, I was introduced to Phil, I don't know, a little over a year ago, Phil, and we hit it off right away. First and foremost, our business strategies are really aligned. I mean, Phil can tell you about their business, but they've built a very successful B2B2C platform across the world, P&C in overseas, and really successful life business here in the US. And since we have a P&C platform that does a lot of the same things, it was a natural fit. But probably more importantly, just the first time I spoke to Phil and got to know Niels and the rest of his team, we knew there was a values connection that's important to us, and I know it's important to Phil and the team. We both have really good teams, and honestly, we all hire nice people, and that goes a long way in our book. So our values were certainly aligned, our strategies were aligned, and we hit it off, and here we are. So really pleased and a privilege to be working with Phil and the team.
Yeah, I have to agree. I mean, we were reflecting on this the other day. Deciding to work together took a coffee. It took as long as it took for Bill and I to have a coffee. We talked about what we were trying to accomplish, what we wanted as from for consumers and for our partners, and it was just very, very clear that there was a partnership there, right? And then the teams got together and they wholeheartedly agreed. So that was really good. Figuring out how to do it and getting together to actually do it took a little bit longer, but still, has gone really, really well. So I agree with everything Bill said.
No, I think the word alignment's come up a few times, and I think how you view the industry and the value you feel insurance brings. I know that that's really a passion point, having talked to both of you on the topic. That insurance is solving problems for people, and it's really, I think, helping them in their time of need. And so it's about the distribution. We want to sell policies, but I know we also want to deliver on the promise. And Phil, that's something that you speak very passionately about, which is the promise of insurance. And in your opinion, like how far does that promise reach? What should the expectations of a consumer be, and what should we be focused on when we're looking at the products we bring to the table?
Yeah, I mean, for me, the emotional part of what we do is this idea that we are able to keep promises even when we don't know what they are, right? People make promises to their families, to themselves, to their partners, and some of those promises often have a financial component, right? They need to be able to have the money to do it, and so I really love that we're able to do that. But you can't really make that promise if then you fail in your first promise, which is to get people through the sales process efficiently and empathetically and warmly and completely. And so the second promise is that we will do that well, right? And so one of the great things about working with the Bindable team is that they have a passion for doing that extremely well. And so when we were looking at whether to build some of the same capabilities, it just didn't make any sense, right? That we would go and build something that was exactly the same, right? And so we really look to Bill and the team to extend our promise, both to whom we can make the promise to, how broadly we can make the promise, and then keep the standard very high on executing against the promise.
And it's interesting, Phil, you may or may not remember, but when we first met, when you were introducing iptiQ, you talked about what everyone on your team talks about, right? Which is meeting, fulfilling that kind of protection gap, right? And that's your mission, and that's really important. I think as InsurTech has taken off, and the number of people, especially young people that are getting into insurance now, we always say to our team, this is insurance sometimes gets a bad rap, but this is a very purposeful business. I mean, this is filling, there are gaps in protection, right? And here in the US, massive gaps in life insurance and other types of coverage. And we always say that, our business is really about helping people at the worst moments of their lives. And that's a noble profession to be in. So we like to tell the team, even though you don't feel like you're doing it every day, because you're working on technology but at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is improve the methodology to help people in the worst moments of their lives. Hopefully we never have to, but things happen, and that's why we do this. So we've always approached this businesses with purpose, and our interests are aligned the same way there.
Yeah. And I think it's a high tide rises all ships approach to our industry, which is critical, which is, sort of a joint collaboration of we're in this for the, to really improve the overall experience, certainly at time of claim. And I think it begins with that first interaction, where the customer is finding out about insurance. I think companies and brands, carriers, brokers, whoever has this access point to the customer, they typically have a lot of data as well. And so taking that data and using that to make a relevant offer is very critical. And Phil, I'd love to hear a little bit about, when you're partnering with somebody, a brand, for example, and I know that iptiQ globally has a lot of fantastic partnerships as well as within the US. If there are examples that you think of where it just starts to make sense to incorporate data into that offer, and maybe even how brands are thinking about their insurance offers.
Yeah, maybe I'll just take a step back on that question for a minute. I think one of the really important things, and one of the things that made our relationship so logical, is that both companies are natively B2B2C. I mean, SwissRe, our parent company, is a B2B company. We believe that our role is to lift great brands and to support those great brands. We do not compete with those great brands. So one of the things that we come to the table with is a great deal of expertise in understanding what data is important, how to access data in a responsible way, how to work with partners, and then how to deliver at the standard that meets their brand expectations in order to be able to do that extremely well. That's why we have partnerships like Daimler, IKEA, and an expanding wave, not only in Europe, but here in the United States and over in Asia as well. So that is the core of who we are. At SwissRe, one of the interesting things is that we have our very first client still 150 years later, right? And that's how important, that's the kind of relationships that we want to build over very, very long periods of time. So when you get back to this using data, I think that the most important data is who the customer is and what their needs are. And some of that data exists inside organizations. Some of that data exists outside them. And one of the things that we do really, really well is that we are able to bring those two contexts together to get a better picture of the customer's life. And that allows us to have a better conversation and make better decisions about how to reach out to them and how to help them with the conversation. So I think it's an absolutely huge topic, but managing it well is the key.
No, it really is. And I think in general, we're seeing an evolution across the board, across all industries, how customers are engaging with brands, what they expect from them. And I think having, to your point, like an IKEA who has this great relationship, to be able to extend that brand affinity with products that are, complementary to their home environment or that brand messaging, I think is really something that we're going to see, that people continue and brands continue to capitalize on. And I think, Bill, I know you have some interesting thoughts on this topic, but where do you think, and based on your experience and where, as you look ahead, like where do you think insurance distribution will evolve and change? Like, how do you think that's going to continue in the future?
Well, go ahead, Bill. Yeah.
I guess first and foremost, I think, and I'll speak from a distribution perspective, it is the hard part. I mean, distribution is the hard part. Delightful user experience, that's table stakes. I think the nice thing about our mutual models, B2B2C models, is that our values don't necessarily need to extend to the end customer, but the partners that serve that customer. So we have 2 clients in every transaction. And that we take that serious. I mean, it's a privilege to work with. We've been very fortunate to work with some great partners, and we know that's a privilege, and that's always been this sponsored distribution. I think gaining that distribution advantage is what matters, and you're going to see carriers and intermediaries, look to get access to preferred channels to whoever their preferred customers are. Because the direct-to-consumer models are expensive. They are very difficult, they're expensive. And I think carriers and intermediaries, and as they think about digital distribution in general, it's really about kind of thinking outside the way where are the channels that their customers are. And for some, that might be independent agents. For some, that might be new entrants, digital fintech apps. It might be adjacencies like mortgage companies and auto dealers. That's how we think about it. And I think more and more carriers, intermediaries are saying, hey, it's really expensive to acquire customers. And they need to think about not only great technology to get them there, but the partnerships that help them gain that advantage.
I mean, I think that it's really impressive. And you mentioned the carrier, and it's something that I think about a lot is how do the carriers stay ahead? So we're a little bit, both roles being that B2B2C, we're certainly closer, to the business that's going to be distributing it. How should carriers be looking at this space and enabling you know, our platforms to be able to integrate and sell. Phil, I know SwissRe as a whole is working very close to the carriers. So what do you think carriers need to be focused on themselves around the product and their distribution?
Well, I think the entire industry for carriers leapt forward about a decade in about 3 months last year, right? So as we all went into lockdown, underwriting changed, the way distribution was being managed changed, and the basis of competition changed. And I think for the very big brands, that was a net beneficial experience. I think that their brands really came to the forefront. So the question then becomes, okay, so how do you add to that? Now that you're in a strong position as a brand, what else can you bring to the table? And how do you ensure that you strike the right balance between, you know, the always tough conversation of not invented here versus best in class, right? And I think that looking to companies like iptiQ and our partnership with Bindable to help round out a product suite or to help lift a set of products into a more digital experience is a great way to actually advance your agenda really quickly. But I would say to everybody in the industry, whatever pace of change we grew up with, that's not the pace of change we're going to see going forward. It's quite a bit faster, and that's why forming partnerships like the one we formed with Bindable is only the beginning, right? You're eventually going to see chains of companies that do things extremely well, innovating in this very, very complex ecosystem.
Yeah, I agree, Phil. This holistic view of the customer, we see it now. You see it with companies like Geico, right? They manufacture auto insurance, but they also sell a lot of other companies' products. Years ago, it was a carrier wouldn't think of selling another company's product, right? We either build it or we don't sell it. And now they say, well, if I can potentially monetize that customer, but more importantly, retain that customer by providing the products that are important to that particular customer, we're seeing more and more carriers say, we may not manufacture, or maybe we'll manufacture it down the road, but we still want to offer it because we know our customers are looking and we don't want them to look at our competitors for it.
No, I think it's a really good point. And I think that there's a lot, every company out there, and certainly the attendees on the call, we're looking at, everyone's looking to tackle this digital space and digital transformation. And it can be incredibly overwhelming because it starts to feel like, where does that even begin? I mean, for some people, it's improving their phone system or getting off of an AS400 and getting accessible data. So I know that there's a lot of silos within our space that are just, that each company almost needs to break down to start to build back together. Is there any guidance or tips, Phil, that you're able to share sort of in this journey of bringing iptiQ to the US and the build versus buy, or even just some learnings along the way when you're evaluating your partnerships that you're able to share with somebody else who's maybe looking at where do I begin, in this process?
Well, I think it goes back to what Bill said at the beginning. You have to look for alignment with your partners right from the get-go. If you don't have a philosophical alignment, if you don't have an alignment of interests, things are going to split off inevitably, right? And so we've worked very hard to create that alignment. We didn't have to work very hard to create it with Bill and the team. It was just there. But we really try to look for that. The second thing is make a decision. Do you want to be a builder or an integrator? There's advantages to being both, right? Probably the best place is where we place ourselves, which is a combination of the two. There are certain things that we do extremely well and better, we think, than almost anybody else or anybody else in the industry, and we build those. We invest quite heavily in them. There are other things that there are others who do just an incredible job. And integrating those other capabilities into our ecosystem and into our value chain makes so much more sense. And Bindable is a good example of that, but there are many others as well. But I think that for executives, that is a defining strategic decision. If you don't make the decision, you've made a decision, right? There's no getting around it. So we should all think about it very, very carefully, because if you go down the build path and the tight integration path, swapping out for different parts later when the ecosystem changes is not going to be a very easy thing to do. So
Yeah,
within our
that makes
ecosystem, one of
sense.
the things brands get is that they get a really good answer now, but they also understand when they do their due diligence that actually it's going to be evergreen, right? There isn't a lot of technology debt here because each of the different components that we have within our system can be replaced by another component in the future.
I mean, consumers have spoken, right? And you know, we know they want convenience. We believe they want choice, but they also want relevancy. And you know, the convenience and relevancy don't necessarily need to come from an insurance brand. They can come from a brand that they trust, maybe more than they trust that insurance brand. So our mutual businesses, what we do is we try to identify and help those brands or those partners that serve customers that relevant offer at the right time, the right moment, in a convenient way, and in a trusted way. And you know, I've been in insurance a long time, and I trust a lot of insurance companies, but not all consumers know the insurance companies the way we do. They know their adjacencies or the incidental partners that might make it more convenient for them. So what we try to do together with iptiQ and with our partners is to actually help build that, help enable that, and that's really what we do. And I think that's and more. I mean, you can just look no further than just read any insurance daily, right? Everyone's talking about embedded insurance and partnership insurance. It matters. Consumers are willing to buy insurance from a non-insurance brand as long as it's convenient and relevant.
I think it's a good point. You say embedded insurance, and I know Bill and I joke because, you know, I might say embedded, he'll say affinity, sponsored. There's about 100 buzzwords for talking about, you know, that offer moment. And Bill, I'd love to understand, is there anything that you've seen even in the last year or 2 years that's been kind of pivotal in how insurance has been distributed? I know, you know, after decades of doing this through affinity groups and traditional models, what do you think is maybe one of the big changes that's happened in the last year or two that's really accelerating what we're seeing in the marketplace?
Well, I'd say I would say it's accelerated. Probably the biggest thing is the API economy, right? I mean, that's changed everything. It's not just in the last year. It's been going on for a while. It's just more, you know, the ease of the APIs and the availability of the APIs and the support teams to do them have grown within organizations. So I think that's probably, it's ultimately making sponsored distribution better and more convenient and all the things we talk about. At the end of the day, though, the value proposition of sponsored distribution remains the same, right? It's lower cost of acquisition, it's consumer value, right? It's convenience, and for carriers, intermediaries, it's generally higher value customers. So that hasn't changed, right? From direct mail of medical malpractice to doctors to, you know, integrated APIs in purchasing any product, right? I mean, the value proposition remains the same. The technology is accelerated. I'd say the API economy really has you know, if you're not playing in that space, it's hard to grow your business through partnerships.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think the other thing, Bill, that's changed is the channel of initiation and the channel of investigation, right? I think we've seen huge shifts in where journeys begin from some of the more traditional channels that you talked about earlier on in terms of lead generation, mail, and so on and so forth, towards digital sources, and relatively few of them. And consequently, there's been a big increase in lead cost. The cost of finding customers is rising really quickly, and it's making this B2B2C proposition much more attractive relative to the other alternatives. And then also recognizing that investigation, right? Consumers are choosing to do a lot more of the investigation on their own because they can, and companies are benefiting from that. And as I said previously, the consequence of that is a big rise in the interest of working with third-party brands, and a big rise also in customers' interest in established insurance brands. Both of those things are happening simultaneously, and I think they are going to be transformative.
Fantastic. And one of the things, and I'd love it if there's any remaining comments, because one of the things I did do was promise Bill that I would keep this, as you said, short. And I said, well, I think short, but I think we want this first episode to be a conversation, to be engaging, and to keep it concise and to the point. And I really think that you both hit on some great points. And I think there's some really fantastic takeaways. I did weave in a couple of the audience questions there, and I apologize if I didn't give credit to the audience. So it was great to see that engagement as well. But is there anything else that that you wanted to add that I maybe didn't ask about before I wrap up? No, I think
I'll just say thank you. Thank you for having us. We really appreciate it. Thank you for being our partners, Bill. With the working relationship is absolutely first rate, and we really, really enjoy it. And I look forward to working with you guys for many, many, many years to come. Maybe 150 years. How about that?
That's great. That's great. I'd like to be around 150. That's nice of you to say, Phil. Thank you. Thanks to your team. As I said at the beginning, nice people always work well together. And both of our teams are nice people. It's a privilege to partner with iptiQ. It's a privilege to have this opportunity. And Jocelyn, thanks for doing this. This is great discussion, and appreciate the hopefully, look forward to watching the next episodes.
Well, awesome. And I appreciate all the attendees who joined in and listened and registered. And we look forward to hearing from you. So obviously, both companies, you can reach on LinkedIn. Both speakers I know are very accessible as well. And feel free to follow up directly if there's any questions that you think of after this podcast. So our goal is just to keep the dialogue going, encourage the conversation, and again, just look at how our industry is changing and keeping everyone informed of that. So thank you everyone for joining Unbind with Bindable, and we will see you next month. Thank you, and thank you both.
Thanks, Jocelyn. Thanks, Phil.